differently.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Today I want to talk about one of the best shows of 2024, and that is, of course, The Penguin. But before I get into all of that, I would just like to thank everybody who watched, liked, and participated in the discussion of the last video. Those may not be crazy numbers for a lot of people, but I'm grateful for it, so thank you. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. And with that out of the way, let's just get right into it because I have a lot to say about this show. The Penguin is the second installment in what has officially been named the Batman Epic Crime Saga, and it takes place roughly 1 week after the end of the Batman. This is a truly phenomenal show. It is not only one of the best shows of 2024, but it is one of the best first seasons of television I've ever seen, and in my opinion, it is one of the best, if not the absolute best, comic book show ever made, easily rivaling the likes of Daredevil Season 1 in my opinion. The Penguin is a masterful example of storytelling and world building in, quite frankly, a market that is just too concerned with cameos and all of this stuff that doesn't really matter. The Penguin serves as a reminder that what makes a good story is the characters, the themes, and the story itself. The Penguin is first and foremost a deep dive into the sick and twisted mind of Oz Cobb. Much like the Batman, it is a character study. It is a subjective piece of television, just like the Batman was a subjective film. It is a deep dive into Oz's psyche, and it results in a character study of the highest caliber. The Penguin is absolutely incredible at manipulating the audience's expectations, almost more so than any other show or movie that I've ever seen, because the showrunners, the writers, and everyone involved expertly gets you on Oz's side almost immediately. You kind of sympathize with him. Penguin is a very impulsive and insecure person, and we see that from the very first episode. He makes really rash decisions purely because he takes things too personally, and all of that stems from this deep inner insecurity that he has about himself, which is something that the show is obviously going to elaborate on. But it's Penguin's own insecurity that kicks the plot into motion here in the show, and everything that happens as a result of this one action that he takes only leads to more death, destruction, and chaos. Yet, the audience more or less finds themselves rooting for Oz. And I think a big reason for this is because the Penguin leans into the idea of the class struggle. This was an idea that was touched on in the Batman, and in the Penguin, they really lean into that idea here, and I think smartly so, because we are able to sympathize with Oz because he came from nothing. He grew up in an extremely poor and underprivileged area of Gotham City. Not only that, but he has a disability which makes him feel separate from the world. It makes him feel separate from society. This is a motif that I think has been running through the Batman Epic Crime Saga. It's something that will return even in this show. Lauren LaFranc is so brilliant because she is able to get us on the side of Oz Cobb. And it is obvious from the beginning that this is not a good man, yet you can't help but root for him. I think the real key to the Penguin is the character of Vic. Renzi Feliz does such a good job with this character, so much so that I hope he is not overlooked when it comes to awards season, because so much of the focus of the discussion about the Penguin is going to be about Oz and Sophia, and understandably so. But what Renzi Feliz does with Vic cannot be stressed enough. He gives such a human and vulnerable performance that is full of pathos, and I think Vic is really the key to making the Penguin work. He is the character that makes this whole show click, because he unlocks the character of Oz Cobb. He is essentially Oz's Robin, and I think that is a really inspired choice by Lauren LaFranc and the showrunners. Oz and Vic develop this dynamic that is extremely likable. In my opinion, it is the best relationship in the entire show, and every interaction between these two is not only sincere, but it provides for some of the most moving scenes in this entire show. And Vic just gives Oz an anchor to humanity. He really grounds Oz. Every time it feels like Oz is going too far or he's on the verge of crossing the line, Vic is able to pull him back and remind him that there is a part of him that wants to do this for the right reason. And yes, I use that phrase loosely because at its heart, the Penguin is really a dark version of the American dream. The reason Penguin and Vic are able to bond so quickly and share such intimate moments is because they both came from nothing. They have a similar upbringing, and Vic also has a disability. Penguin has his clubbed foot, which results in the limp when he walks, and Vic has a very noticeable stutter. But what I really like is that not only are these two able to bond over their shared background and disabilities, but they make each other better for it. Throughout the show, Vic is very hesitant at first, and understandably so. He is reluctant, he's unsure about his association with Oz. He doesn't even know if he wants to fully commit to working with Oz. But as the show progresses, we see Vic become more and more confident. He becomes more ambitious, more sure of himself. There is an excellent scene early in the season where Oz and Vic are at a restaurant and the two are placing their orders, and Vic really struggles to get the name of his order out, which results in the waiter finishing the order for him. And Oz gets extremely angry at the waiter. He tells him to wait for Vic to finish, and he turns to Vic and tells him to go ahead and finish the order. It's a really touching moment despite how angry Oz gets. But the point is, this scene hammers home how much Vic really struggles with this stutter. Yet in the later episodes of The Penguin, you can see Vic deliver more inspired monologues where he doesn't stutter at all. And it's this kind of character progression that really sells the dynamic between Vic and Oz. They are the thing that makes this show work. They are the characters that make this show what it is. Of course, the other major player in this show is Sophia Falcone, played by Kristen Milioti, who delivers a career-best performance. Kristen Milioti is an absolute revelation in The Penguin. She is incredibly magnetic in every single scene she is in. She almost steals the show from Colin Farrell. That is how good she is. She brings such a powerful presence to Sophia, to the point where every time Sophia walks in the room, you can feel the power balance shift. Because of Sophia's background, you're not entirely sure what to make of her. It's difficult to get a read on her. Is she in control? Because at times it feels like she is always in control of the situation, no matter what it is. It feels like she is manipulating everyone and taking advantage of everyone because she knows their true intentions, including Oz. Yet at the same time, because of Sophia's reputation as the hangman, it also feels like she could snap at any moment. It makes her really unpredictable, despite the fact that it feels like she has all the power in every situation. In episode 4, we get a detailed retelling of Sophia Falcone's backstory, and it is extremely effective in terms of getting the audience to sympathize with her. And this is yet again another example of the masterful writing on display here in the Penguin, because after the events of episode 4, we learn that Sophia was a victim. She was not the hangman. In fact, she was a victim of her entire family. She was framed by her father and told by every single person that she trusted that she is a monster and needs to be sent away for her own good. The kind of psychological and physical torture that Sophia undergoes while she is at Arkham Asylum is enough to make anybody snap. And when she understandably snaps, it's really haunting, because all it does is validate the pre-existing notion that everybody had of her. In the eyes of her father, Carmine Falcone, it justifies his decision to send her to Arkham. It justifies Oz's betrayal of Sophia. Every person that Sophia trusted, her dad, Oz, the rest of the Falcone crime family, they all betray her and throw her under the bus. The only person that stood by her was her brother. And when she gets out of Arkham, the first thing she learns is that her brother has been murdered. And he was murdered by the very man that betrayed her and sold her out to her father. This creates the bitter rivalry between Sophia and Penguin. And this is a true blood rivalry, unlike what we have seen in so many of these comic book shows. These two truly despise each other, and they know exactly how to hurt each other. One of the other major characters in the Penguin is Oz's mom, Frances, played by Deirdre O'Connell, who also does a great job in this show. This is an interesting example of the show borrowing inspiration from something like The Sopranos, because it does evoke a lot of shades of The Sopranos in the sense that The Penguin is very much a crime drama. It is not just a comic book show. It is a crime drama that draws from things like The Sopranos, Better Call Saul, and even Breaking Bad in order to elevate its source material. Oz's mom plays an interesting role in this story, because at first it feels like she's only there to give Oz the motivation to seek power. We learn that everything Oz does is solely because he wants the love and approval of his mother, and he wants it desperately. In fact, he doesn't just want it, he needs it. And because of this, it drives him to do all of these heinous things. As the story unfolds and the chaos ensues, we learn that not only was Oz doing all of this for his mother, but he did something truly terrible. Early in the season, we learn that Oz had two brothers. Both of them died, but we never learn how. And in the penultimate episode of The Penguin, we see that Oz, at a very young age, condemned his brothers to death. He may not have made the active decision to kill them, but he sure as hell didn't do anything to stop their deaths either, trapping them in a storm drain that was inevitably going to flood and result in his brothers drowning. Oz made this decision because he wanted his mother's love all to himself. And it paints a picture of a true, genuine monster. This makes the dynamic between Oz and his mother that much more interesting, especially because Sophia knows that the way to hurt Oz is through his mother, and through a series of twists and turns, Sophia ends up capturing Oz's mom, and she forces Oz to confront the truth. And what we learn is that Oz's mom knew the entire time that Oz is the reason his brothers are dead. And she hates him for it. She thinks Oz is a monster. She has resented Oz from the day that she knew. She hates him so much that she was willing to ask the local mob boss, Rex Calabrese, to kill Oz at a young age. Even when he's faced with the truth, Oz lies to his mom. He cannot bring himself to tell the truth, as we learn that the only person Oz truly cares about is himself. He is willing to continue selling her on this lie as long as he gets to continue to delude himself that he's doing this for his mom because he loves her. And the minute that he gives her the lifestyle and the status that she wants, that she deserves, then she will love him. It is just devastating, especially when Oz's mom says she had plenty of love to give to the three of them. This is where that manipulation of the audience's expectations comes in again, because you don't know who to root for. The show spent a lot of time getting you on Oz's side, but after episode 4, Sophia too has now been othered, bringing back that running motif throughout this entire franchise. Sophia has been othered because she was a victim, because she was oppressed by her family. She was tortured in Arkham, and in many ways Sophia becomes the protagonist of the Penguin. But because Penguin is the show's titular character, it's hard to not root for him as well. We find ourselves in an interesting position because you don't know who you want to win. It's a really interesting dynamic that I think Lauren LaFranc and the rest of the writers pulled off beautifully. The best episode in this entire show is episode 3. And the reason for that is because this episode opens up with a flashback of the ending of the Batman from the perspective of Vic. And we see the true devastation of Riddler's actions. This cold open of episode 3 recontextualizes the entire ending of the Batman to the point where we see how truly evil the Riddler was. Throughout the Batman, Riddler is constantly espousing about how he is trying to liberate the underprivileged people of Gotham, people who have been mistreated and stepped on and shoved aside in favor of the rich and the powerful. But the people that are most affected by Riddler's actions are the very same people he claims to care about. And seeing this from Vic's perspective, seeing not only the destruction but the death of his family and his friends, it goes such a long way in terms of not only endearing us to Vic, but showing us how much this city was affected by the Riddler's actions. Because it's easy to watch the Batman and think, oh, this third act is really mostly a set piece to give Batman a big action scene to end the movie on. But no, the Penguin shows us that this is a real tragedy that affected real people of Gotham City. It is just such an incredibly powerful moment in this show. It is by far my favorite episode in this entire season, and this is an incredible season, make no mistake. By the end of the show, what we see is Oz pulling out a victory, unsurprisingly, by giving Sophia the ultimate defeat. When it feels like Sophia has reached the end of the road, she prepares herself to be killed, but instead, Oz pins everything on her. All of the death and destruction, the chaos, all of it that happens in this show, Oz pins on Sophia, sending her back to Arkham, delivering her the most brutal defeat that she could possibly suffer, because he knows that for her, that is a fate worse than death. Just like Sophia knew how to hurt Oz with his mom and confront him with the truth of his mother's resentment, Oz knows how to hurt Sophia by sending her back to the place that broke her, the place that tortured her psychologically and physically. It is a devastating finale. And in the end, after he's won, Oz and Vic sit by the Gotham River having a heart-to-heart. And after everything they've been through, everything they've survived through together, Vic tells Oz he's like family to him. And in that moment, you can see the light bulb go off in Penguin's head. And he makes the decision to kill Vic. Oz kills Vic, arguably the only person in the world who even likes him. The only person in the world who cares about him. The person who saved his life countless times throughout this show. The person who showed him loyalty, who was willing to not only work under him, but to grow under him, to learn from him. And Oz kills him. It is the most devastating and painful scene to watch because it's so slow. It's painful. The shot lingers as we watch Vic suffocate to death by Oz's hand. It's devastating because the showrunners, the writers, all of the creators, they just rip our hearts out. And in that moment, we are just reaffirmed with what we already know. Oz is a monster. He is irredeemable. There is nothing about him that is sympathetic or deserving of our understanding. This man is a Batman villain, and there is a reason he is a villain. Too many of these comic book shows try to take the anti-hero angle when they make a show or a movie about a villain. You see it with the MCU shows. You see it with the Sony Venom movies. But the Penguin understands that this is a story about a Batman villain, and he is not a good person. So I admire and respect the decision that the creators made to have Oz kill Vic. No matter how much it broke my heart, I respect the hell out of it because they did not shy away from showing us who Oz truly is. And even more so than hammering home the fact that this man is a villain, what this ending does is it gets us on the side of Bruce Wayne. It makes us root for Batman even more than we already were. Yes, Batman is the hero of the Batman Epic Crime Saga. He is a symbol of hope and justice. But after this ending in The Penguin, every single person who has watched this show now wants Batman to unleash the fists of justice on this horrible man. I want Batman to beat this man within an inch of his life. I want Batman to leave Penguin permanently disabled for killing my boy Vic. There is nothing I want more, nothing that I would find more satisfying than watching Batman destroy this man after what happened. But the fact that this show is able to elicit such a visceral and emotional reaction from me speaks volumes about the amount and quality of the work that went into this show. It is the perfect example of how you not only make a show about a villain and elevate the source material, but it's a perfect example of world building. This feels like a natural extension of the Gotham City that Matt Reeves gave us in The Batman. It feels immersive. It feels real. It feels gritty. The Penguin is a much different show than The Batman. This is a very street level movie. It feels much more grimy. It feels much more dirty. This is a hard R-rated HBO crime drama, and it never shies away from that. I was surprised by how much profanity and violence is in this show, but I also respect it at the same time because it shows that Warner Brothers and HBO were willing to give all of these creative people full freedom to do what they wanted, and it paid dividends because Gotham is just as immersive. I really admire that this show tries to emulate the incredible aesthetic of Greg Fraser's cinematography from the Batman. Of course, the Penguin is not quite as successful because Greg Fraser did not shoot this show, and the show does not have the same budget as the Batman. But the fact that it tries to establish that visual continuity goes a long way. The score, composed by Mick Giacchino, the younger brother of Michael Giacchino, who scored the Batman, is perfect. It is appropriately gritty and just gives you this very visceral feeling of this is a show that really highlights Gotham City as a place where people have to do what they have to do in order to survive. They have no other choice. Everything from the cinematography to the editing to the writing is just so wonderfully executed. We even see characters from the Batman return, like Detective Kenzie, the crooked narcotics detective, like Chief Bach, and these cameos feel like real interactions between characters in this world. They don't serve this mindless purpose of cheap fan service that we've seen in all of the Marvel projects since Avengers Endgame. These cameos aren't here so you can do the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. These cameos are here to serve a purpose. They serve the character, they serve the story, and it makes this Gotham feel palpable. It makes it feel real and connected. This is how you build a superhero franchise. This is how it's done. Everything about this show is so good. It's all clicks. It is one thing to have a vision for a show, but in order for that vision to be fully realized, everybody involved with the project needs to be unified in that vision. And that is exactly what happens here in the Penguin, just like it did in the Batman. I'll end off by singing the praises of Colin Farrell, because his Penguin was a fan favorite from the Batman. Colin Farrell does phenomenal work here. He cements himself as not only the definitive version of Oz Cobb, but he elevates himself to one of the best live-action Batman villains, rivaling that of Heath Ledger's Joker. I know that might be hearsay to some, but that is how good this show is. That is how powerful the character work is, how effective the storytelling is. Colin Farrell is able to act through all of that makeup and prosthetics. It's easy to take a look at his character and think that all of the incredible makeup and prosthetic work is a big reason for his performance, but it's not. There are so many moments where Colin Farrell's emotions just shine through all of those effects. He is delivering a real emotional, nuanced performance here. And the fact that he's able to do it through all of this heavy makeup and prosthetic work speaks volume about his talents. It speaks volume about the performance. He is giving us something really exceptional here. And that is the case for everyone involved with this show. I've already talked about Kristen Milioti and Renzi Feliz, and Deirdre O'Connell. She does an incredible job as well as Frances Cobb, especially the scenes with Sophia Falcone. Frances Cobb, she holds her own against Sophia. It's a really interesting dynamic. Frances Cobb suffers from dementia with Lewy bodies, which is a very specific type of dementia that is particularly debilitating, but in a moment of complete lucidity, she has this incredible psychological showdown with Sophia, a battle of the wits, knowing that Oz is going to come through. And when we learn the truth about Oz's mom and what she thinks of him, it only makes this scene with Sophia that much more tense. Because despite the fact that she despises her son, she's telling Sophia, my son is going to win. He's going to get you, and you're going to be sorry. I could go on and on about the Penguin, from its exploration of the class structure to this extremely relevant act that Penguin pulls. So much of the manipulation that Penguin does in this show is him adopting a populist message. And if you think that's not of the time, well, then I would direct you to the most recent election results and tell me how it's not relevant. There is so much about this show that is so layered and nuanced. What I really want to say here is that the Penguin is how you do these kind of shows. This is how you build a superhero franchise. This is how you do an in-depth exploration of a character. This is the benefit of television. It allows you to explore a character in depth in a way that a movie just does not afford you because of the sheer amount of time of storytelling. The Penguin does so many things right. It's not a perfect show. There are some strange inconsistencies with some of the story beats. I think Oz conveniently escapes tense situations a little too often, but these nitpicks are so minor in the grand scheme of things. It's just not enough to overcome everything that this show does well. And make no mistake, this show does a lot of things well. This is not only one of the best shows of 2024, as I said, this is the best comic book show ever made, and it reaffirms my belief that Matt Reeves is the best thing to ever happen to Batman. Thanks for sticking this one out for me, guys, because I know it was a long one, but I just had so much to say. There's so much to cover with this show because it is so brilliant. It's so extensive, and I could just go on and on, but I won't, I promise. I didn't even touch on so many of the specifics between the episodes. I did cover each individual episode on my TikTok, if that is something that you are interested in watching, to where I really get into the weeds with each episode, even looking at all of the Easter eggs to the comics and discussing how this show really portrays Oz as a genius in the sense that he has these kind of street smarts that other characters just don't have, because even when it seems like he's screwed, he finds a way out of it. He's much better thinking on his feet than he is coming up with a real plan. Bruce Wayne is obviously what we think of when we think of a genius. He's very skilled in science and deductive reasoning and technology. He's very good with all of these things that allow him to be Batman. But Oz is a genius in a much different way. And it's just little things like that that I think really help this show go the extra mile. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Have you watched The Penguin? Let me know what you thought if you have, because I would love to discuss this with anyone. If you haven't watched The Penguin, I highly recommend it to everybody. Whether you are a fan of Batman or comic book shows or not, I really think you would enjoy this show because it is that good. And I will just say, you do not have to watch the Batman in order to enjoy the Penguin. But I do think you get a little bit more out of it if you do watch the Batman, because it does have some connections. And this show does very subtly set up the Batman Part 2, ending with the most perfect frame that you could imagine. which is the bat signal lighting up in the sky. Peace, plants, namaste.